No, don't do that.
Oh, I would.
Should I try for something a little smoother? We'll see how it goes. So, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming out on this foggy and kind of chilly and very dark night. We appreciate you being here. I want to start by saying thank you to Star Colebrook, our ever-present, ever-wonderful champion of riding in the valley, and for all the work that she does for Helicon, as well as Steph, who's here videoing for us tonight. Thank you, Steph. And to the Logan Library, to Kat and Joseph in particular, for the work they do in allowing us to have this space, and Ibis for donating coffee. We are going to have open mic after the initial reading, so if you haven't signed up, the sheet's back there by Amber, I think. Yep. And just a reminder during open mic, if you don't want to be videotaped, just give Steph a nod, and she will stop the video camera.
She's going to turn the echo down just a tiny bit.
Really? You don't like that? Because I was really liking it.
Keep talking.
How's this? A little better? Not so much.
So just turn this all the way off. Yeah, just turn it really.
How about this? Now I'm not even wiped at all, but I'm good with that. Okay, we good?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Steph.
All right, so I'm Jennifer Sinor. I teach at Utah State University. I teach creative nonfiction, and tonight the students in my graduate class are going to do a presentation based on the work that they've done this semester. But before we get started, we are actually going to close our eyes. I know it's scary, but that's what we're going to do. So you're just going to close your eyes. You're going to rest your feet on the ground, your hands in your lap. And you're going to just take your awareness to your breath. Not going to change it. You're just going to notice it. Soften through your face. Let the space around your eyes grow soft. The planes of your cheeks, your jaw, and then on your next inhalation, inhale deep into the belly, feeling the belly fill with air. And then exhale that air out. Inhaling again, feeling the belly fill with air, navel pulls away from spine. Watch the breath travel up the body, spreading the ribs and settling at the very top. Long, slow, even exhalation, emptying from the top of the collarbones, down through the ribs, all the way to the bottom of the lungs, the belly. Navel draws into spine. Exhale every last bit of air out. Then inhale again. And lastly, you're going to add a breath count to this breath. So as you inhale, you're going to inhale to the slow count of 4. And as you exhale, you're going to exhale to the count of 6. Exhalation lasting 2 counts longer, noticing how the body and the mind start to settle. Welcome everyone to Helicon West. I'm so glad that you could be here with us tonight. That's the way we start all of my classes, just a way to bring ourselves entirely into the space and to become part of a community, one that breathes together, and in this case writes together and listens to the writing that we produce. It's a really powerful community, and I'm so honored to be part of it. The community has created this book, so if you're interested in purchasing the Helicon West Anthology, it's available in the back. And then STAR also makes sure that these beautiful broadsides are created based on the work that gets done here and presented here. So if you're interested in supporting Helicon West, these are for sale. If you're interested in being part of the broadside community, you can submit work to STAR. The other day, weeks ago, I was running early in the morning. It was the morning of the full moon, and I run around 5 in the morning, so the moon's just setting in the east when I'm getting up. And this moon was spectacular. It was this giant orange orb, and those kinds of things, I really stop in my tracks when I see something like that. And I had just read recently in the Vedic culture saw those celestial events like a full moon and the sun as portals, as gates to another world. And I just loved thinking about this other world being shot through with light, and that light-filled world was coming into our world through this moon. It was beautiful. And the color just reminded me of the bottom of a cowrie shell, so it made me think of where I grew up, home. So I was running, and it was beautiful, and I was feeling good about the world. And then I turned the corner, and I heard some yelling, which is unusual at 5 in the morning. And at first I thought people were just celebrating. Again, strange, but that's what I thought was going on. But then as I got closer, I realized that was not what was happening. What was happening was there was a man, and he was screaming at his family. He was throwing stuff from his pickup truck onto the lawn. And he was yelling, get out of here. You can't do anything, get out of here. So there was what looked to be probably his wife or partner, and what looked to be his young kids. And I didn't know what to do. I don't carry a phone with me, so I didn't know if I should call the police. And there wasn't any physical violence, but you can imagine how that shattered the morning. I kept running, and then soon enough he passed by me in his pickup truck speeding down the street. And the thing about that moment is that within 10 minutes, I had the beauty of the moon and this man yelling at his children. And that, to me, is what creative nonfiction holds. That these two things happen simultaneously in our world, in our life, in our day, in a moment. And what creative nonfiction does is it captures that. It captures that complexity. And when we write, as these students have written this semester, they don't just write about the moon, nor do they only write about the man yelling on the lawn. Because we, as human beings, don't believe in either one of these stories as the only story. The story we know to be true is the one that holds both the moon and the man yelling at the same time. And it's the complexity of that that makes, for me, creative nonfiction the most compelling work and the most interesting for me as a writer to engage in. And that's what these students have done this semester. And they've worked really hard. One of the metaphors that we used or thought about this semester was this, something that I had read about when King Arthur sends his knights off to search for the Holy Grail. The instructions that he gives to his knights are to go to the deepest, darkest part of the woods where there is no path. And that is where you enter in to find the Grail. And we talked about that this semester, about struggle and difficulty, darkness and messiness. And that is really the place where the Grail exists, in those hard spaces. And these students have done that work this semester. They've worked hard to think about their own lives in ways that have both the man and the moon, and then to bring them both together. So we have divided the evening into 2 parts. In the first group, we're going to have Carly, Em, Shaun, Camille, Tyler, Mark, Justyn, and Andrea. They're not reading in that order. I just happen to put them down in that order. They're going to do all the introducing, and then we'll stop, have a little break for 2 seconds, and then we'll have the second group. Thank you.
Aporia is a concept in Greek philosophy, and it's also the idea written about by Jacques Derrida and Luce Irigaray. Aporia is Greek for impasse or puzzlement, and Derrida asserts that there are certain things, like grief or forgiveness or giving gifts, interestingly, that require failure in order to succeed. For example, to succeed at grieving, one must let the deceased go, and then in turn has failed at grieving because they have stopped remembering. Thus, to experience grief is to experience impasse. Labor is also aporia.
It was my first day as the live-in apprentice at the Rock Hill Creamery, a small working farm and micro dairy in northern Utah. I stood on a bare patch of concrete as sweat gathered around my hairline and underneath a stiff pair of overalls. They were denim, shades darker than the June sky, broadcasted that they were brand new. I was as green to farming as the key brand label that flagged my chest. All around me were piles of cow shit. My task was to scrape the corral floor clean and push the cow piles into the amassing pile of poop on one side of the corral. Very glamorous. After just 2 or 3 passes with the large metal shovel, I was tired and overwhelmed by the area of the corral. My soft hands caught in the grain of the shovel's wooden handle, early stages of blisters beginning to form. My back hurt from the hunch I'd assumed over the shovel, the end of its handle pressed into the small of my belly. As the poop gathered on the shovel's surface, I had to put the entire weight of my body into it, pushing from my pelvis and hips to get the shit to slide. As I made my way further from the feeding trough, where the cows stand as they graze on hay during the milking, the amount of poop thinned and the effort required lessened. I got into more of a rhythm. But then there is an angle at which to hold the shovel that allowed its edge to skim the concrete. But then, just as I would start to feel a sense of satisfaction with myself for my determination and quick learning, the order and cleanliness that was gained with each pass of the shovel, its edge would catch on an unknown crack in the concrete and halt my forward momentum. The handle rammed into my belly. Although physically demanding, shoveling doesn't take much thought. So I tried to convince myself of the nobility of the work with lines of Wendell Berry reeling through my head. What is the point of labor saving if by making work effortless, we make it poor?
According to Wilcox Produce in Rexburg, Idaho, there are 3 types of potatoes in this world. Number 1s, number 2s, and process. Number 1s are beautiful, smooth, no sliced edges rotting prematurely, oval, medium-sized, firm. They pass by me on the belt. Number 2s I scoop up and toss down a chute to my left. They are ugly, misshapen, sliced up from machinery, with white flesh turned gray exposed on the edges. They have twisting limbs, knots, are too big, too small. They go off to become potato pearls and french fries. Processed potatoes are garbage. Rotten, deformed, bright red and dark gray, even black with mold and bubbling, squishy skin. They go down the chute to my right along with other trash from the belt. A Coke can, a deer skull, a scrap piece of metal. Working in the potato factory is like walking underwater willingly every day. It's winter, so it's dark when we all get here at 7:30. We stay inside this warehouse all day until work is over, which varies, but is usually around 6 or 7. It's dark when we leave. The sun could refuse to come up and we would not notice or care because there are no windows here, and the only weather we watch for is the current of the potatoes. Everything is damp, always. My hair, my hands, my jeans, my hoodie, misted with potato dirt water and the cleaning chemicals that the potatoes are sprayed with before they reach us. When I close my eyes, potatoes are all I can see, rolling, jumping, swimming through my mind.
An old stooped German man shuffles toward the food line. He helped program the first codes for Atlas, Sydney whispers. Atlas X is one of 4 missions meant to harness the power of the Large Hadron Collider. It seeks to find an underlying symmetry to the nature of the universe, a code of sorts, that can explain why everything behaves the way it behaves. It also serves to test the data acquired in each collision against the predictions of the standard model of particle physics. Sydney, much like the ancient gentleman who now has loaded his plate with 2 carrots, codes for Atlas. Her internship as a doctoral candidate for USC requires her to look at a single detector plate and to analyze the coding that registers the detections when the various instruments reverberate after each collision. There are over 100 detector plates in Atlas alone, and Sydney oversees just the one. The coding already works, but if it can be even a fraction more efficient, then her job is well done. A line chef scoops a lump of creamy lasagna onto my plate, and I find Makenzie and Sydney seated at a circular table near a panoramic window pane at the rear of the immense mess hall. I hear snippets of French, German, Italian, English, and many other languages I failed to recognize as I went through the aisles of tables and benches. Laughter pops up like springtime daisies. Words like luminosity, joules, quarks, vibrations, electrons become as common as our unique English helping verbs. I am struck by the scale of it all. Thousands of physicists, dozens of languages, billions of dollars, millions of hours, all poured into a singular pursuit, to know more than we did yesterday about why we are here.
I extended the wooden handle of my dipper, lowering the white cup slowly into the murky water, attempting to avoid disturbing any potential mosquito larvae. The fish pond lay in a scummy mess, wiped green with the mossy signs of neglect. In my time as a mosquito abatement technician, I'd never seen a breeding ground for mosquitoes more perfect than this. This was my job. I located potential habitats, mosquito breeding grounds, and desecrated their sanctuary. I retrieved the cup from the pond, its edges now draped and dripping with hairy moss and duckweed, before glancing into the cloudy murk. The filth roiled with pupa and larvae, drops of black and tan that spun, dancing and diving through the dirty water. Rapidly they rose to the surface, retrieving a quick breath, before pirouetting into the cup's murky depths again. I watched the fish pond's impermeable surface continue to bubble with the mosquito's desperation before I raised the backpack sprayer nozzle, pointing it at the surface in an act of condemnation. With a squeeze of the trigger, the pesticide coated the fish pond surface in an oily window pane, and I tarnished their asylum. Once, as a lifeguard, I'd saved lives. I found it ironic then that now I stole them almost every day, even if they were just bugs. At times we are asked to give, and at other times we are told to take.
Much to my mother's chagrin, I have not continued to sew as an adult. I have always hated sewing. I vividly remember the blue poppy-dotted skirt because it matched her brother's navy tuxedo on the day that he got married. It was while wearing that skirt, meticulously hand-stitched in yet another painstaking but vain effort to try and win over her affections, that my mother told me that she hated me. I have absolutely no recollection of what I said or did that set her off, but honestly, the details do not matter. Moms shouldn't tell daughters that they hate them, not even in jest, yet I wasn't even offered that courtesy in this moment. Moms should just love their daughters no matter what. This has never been the truth of our bond, and no amount of therapy, journaling, meditation, music, or salt lamps, or essential oils in my life seem to help me get over my unending need for her to just love me for exactly who I am. Agnostic, childless, divorced, gay. I'm tired of telling this story and hearing folks say, it's okay, you will find your chosen family. Because the fact of the matter is, nobody else gave me life like my mother did. So I don't just hate sewing, I resent it, because it's a reminder to me that I've only ever been a great big fucking disappointment to the one person on this earth that I long to be close to.
I chit-chatted with another grad student last week about theses. I love that feeling, I said, when you find an article that speaks exactly to what you're working on. I actually hate when that happens, he said. I asked him why. Because, he said, that means that what you wanted to do has already been done. Perhaps the only thing worse than not finding that common understanding is actually finding it, as if you'd finally caught the butterfly and realized you had cupped your hands too tightly, and as it drops into the grass, you wish it had never been within your reach. It is a good thing that we can't call forth pain from memory, but the downside is that every new instance of pain feels unique. Unfortunately, that pain has been done before, too. When journalist Christopher Hitchens was dying of stage 4 esophageal cancer, he recounted the dismay of, while signing books, being told by fans that they knew someone who had died of cancer, so they understood what he was going through. He even described a sort of elitism he felt, a protectiveness over the uniqueness of his own form of cancer. It may sound petty, but in a situation like that, I may also grasp for anything that makes me, me, even if it's a metastatic tumor, while there's still a me left. I hardly understand myself, let alone the trials of others, no matter how you choose to categorize them. If you don't know yourself, the advice to write what you know is only white noise. While I can't comment on what it feels like to give birth, I can ask you if a mother or nurse has ever told you that going into labor is routine, or that whatever agony ensues is normal, downright banal. You want to listen, you want to speak, you do not want to be told. The next time you catch the flu, don't let anyone tell you that they have it too, or that they just got over a nasty bug, or even that something's been going around at the office. They may have had the flu, but not this one. This virus is yours.
Sitting at the table, eating dinner late again, I stare at the darkness of the autumn evening. I try to decompress. It is week 12 of 14-hour days in my graduate degree. My husband rests in his chair across the room. Our baby, now 17, shushes the air with his pencil strokes working calculus problems. The window next to me frames silhouettes of mountains cradling Logan City lights. They're like stars resting on the blackened earth from their clinging. Blinking their sleepy eyes, they mimic mine. My hand lifts a bite. The fork prongs catch my lip before successfully delivering feta and vegetables behind my teeth. My attempt to make good for always eating at this hour. I feel like a toddler feeding myself. I am growing, sometimes tired, like darkness. I draw in a deep breath, siphon the atmosphere behind my ribs. My husband turns binaural and isochronic music on. Peace, like the picture on the screen, infuses the sky of the vaulted room. Sound waves nestle up to me, surround me, pass through my being. Undulating, they massage loose, tension's tight grip, coax pinches in my sides to unpin. I open my scriptures. A bright sensation enlivens my mind. Warmth swells in my chest. I feel safe in this soothing space, this refuge. Tension converted, floats free. Emancipated, I leave behind deadlines, being marginalized by the marginalized. Aren't we all marginalized by someone? And scan the masses in my memory who only I had assembled by giving them permission to judge me over the last 50 years. I let them go into the void of night as ink running from my pen laid down on their parchment grave. Joy begins to twinkle like tears inside me, wanting to sink again with my life. I cry, washing bigotry, insensitivity, silencing away. They dissipate into the darkness, tantalizing my heart with their lightning. I embrace all of these lights.
At 6 years old, I felt the flesh of a bigger boy press against my skin. He guided my hands around his body. He told me where to position myself so that he could place the burden of his body upon me. I submitted. 7 years later, he pushed his head through a new hole and kicked the kitchen chair out from underneath himself. This burden only gets heavier. As an LDS missionary, I spent half of my personal studies in prayer. Dressed in white shirt, tie, and name tag, I hunched my body over the metal chair beside my desk. I closed my eyes, and I would allow myself to feel things, imagining placing each of the miserable feelings inside one of those chutes they have at a bank drive-thru. I'd imagine placing the little shuttle filled with my insecurities, my love for an old roommate, and my hatred for the boy at the end of the noose, all launching heavenward. God would sit at the other end, opening the little shuttle, dumping out the feelings and refilling the shuttle with his love. He'd place the shuttle back in the chute and send it directly back into my heart. In those moments, I would decide that I could forgive the boy at the end of the noose, if it meant that God's love would stay with me. I would wrap my arms around myself, trying to hold this warmth inside of me, but it would fade as soon as I held my body inside my own touch. Thank you.
Thank you to Carly, M, Shaun, Camille, Tyler, Mark, Justyn, and Andrea. I have such a good job. This is what I get to sit and do every day, is sit with these beautiful people and experience their work with them. So the last set is a smaller group of 6. It includes Britt, Alyssa, Kelsie, Andrew, Adrian, and Sami.
Nobody clapped, though.
We are group 2. The word, like how the first half of us worked with aphoria, we noticed the common theme of attachment running through our work. And so our responses today are based around the word attachment, posing questions about it to ourselves, and each of us answering from what we've written this semester. What are you attached to?
Nursing.
Perfection.
Alienation.
Recovery.
Hummingbirds.
Transcendence.
Who are you attached to?
I was 11. Julio often took me with him to work on the house Sundays when my mom and sisters went to church. For 3 uninterrupted hours, I could hold boards in place while the drill squealed in his hands. I could lie pinned underneath him in the hallway as his eyes melted over my small breast,
The hospital
where I
overnight
could
and
lie in
hooked
my
up with
parents'
fluid while
bed,
my family
coaxed into
sat and
taking
stared
more
at my
and
small
more
body
of
in
my
the hospital
clothes
bed.
off, until
When my heart
finally
rate lowered
only
to
his
24
straight
beats per
garments
minute,
were
the
left,
doctor checked
and
me
I
for
balked
some
when he
indication.
says, "What looks like a
Where
hot dog?
are you attached?
Touch it."
Who
Close
are you
my eyes
attached
from the snowy, shadowy campus, turn my mind inward, designing each of my alien creatures. The next obvious step was to place them into an ecosystem of grass, lawn grass. Write a story centered on a regular pattern stretched over the entire surface of the ground. I first drew the map of receding hills on journey across it, and the intelligent species living there, smiling salamander-like humanoid, with spiky tipped antlers drawn immediately on the big, dark skinny prep. Everything smells like the label as a local of rain. This naming I based on the earth. SpongeBob. Wherever I look, so ground gang creature on the land, attack skies and seagulls. Lighter my memory of swimming line. Look, yellow sun stand in the sky. After writing local in my box, I noticed that the green satellite flickering high. I head south, and so on the next sentence added doors in front of granting the name local no need for alien creation. The air hangs so thick.
Who are you attached to?
Where
I stare
are
at
you
myself
attached?
in the bathroom mirror of a mall in Tacoma, Washington, and I don't recognize myself. It's a different Andrew, an alternate Andrew, a boy unafraid of holes, and there's something like mourning in my eyes. Maybe more like liberation, maybe more like joy. But I see it there, the space between selves, between my body, my spirit. I lean in closer, the stone counter pressing into my mother's warm touch. I don't care. She likes to hold my hands a little better. It's her way of being connected, one that I mimic myself.
Who are you attached?
But I'm not paying attention to her hands.
I kept telling
Instead,
myself the same
I look
things
deep
I said
into
in
her
nursing
eyes.
school. The same things I said to my patients. You can do this. She looks at me. Strong. Determination fills her eyes. I convinced myself the rewards were greater than the pain. It is time to have the hours were great. Her stomach tightens with another contraction. I had the freedom to do what I wanted. Let's it build now without prompting. I had the money to travel if I wanted. Everything she has. I had plenty of free time immediately. I can see something different to ride my horse. Her face is none of the career options that interested me. There's no afford me the same type of life she is exerting. In fact, the dream I was living in coastal Oregon, I say, quickly became give us another exactly like nursing. I don't have to look at the nurse. Leaving nursing seemed like no contraction has moved the baby along with the feeling I had. Deep breath, quick. Then right back stepping away from a career so many people succeeded at. 3, turning my back on such a respected and stable job was moving back. A sensation that comes so rarely. Surely if I were stronger, I would find a sense of fulfillment that tells me nursing hadn't been all bad. I learned a lot as a nurse, but about people and about myself, it's gone. If I were to turn back time and have a chance to do things over again, I'm not sure I'd trade the experience for a different.
While I was attending BYU, my parents came to visit and took me out to dinner. My dad offered me a breadstick, 150 calories, and I burst into tears. I then pretended I hated breadsticks. Stuart, my boyfriend, wanted to split a hot fudge ice cream sundae, 850 calories, and M&Ms on top, 10 calories each. I took 3 bites, about 75 calories, while I closed my eyes to get the food down my throat. Driving home alone, I thought about the 75 calories. 75 calories, or really probably more like 100 for the M&Ms, and maybe I underestimated how big my bites were, and it was more like 200. 200 calories more than my meals, more than I allowed myself to eat. 200 calories of ice cream.
I hold open my notebook at the top of Timpanogos Mountain, deep in the Utah Canyon. I walk to the edge of the cliffside and look down. The earth miles below, rocks, rivers, gravel, insects, grass, trees. Up above, in the bulk of eternity, a sky with stars sleeping in sunlight. Within hours, they'll wake with the moon and construct their galaxies on the canvas of the universe. But it's just me here in this moment. So I smile, and I scream. My voice rebounds and echoes across the mountainside, my spirit dancing in the zenith of cosmos and sound and being. I'll let it envelop me completely.
Winter, generated in frigid clouds above the nearby Salt Lake.
You took a pill for everything. You swallowed instead of spoke, drowned the feelings out. When I had panic attacks as a teenager, Julio gave me Xanax from his own ward staff.
Mid-September.
My sisters and I were told therapy was shameful, that seeing the school counselor would go on our permanent record, and students who were mentally unstable didn't get into college. Talking to the church leader wasn't safe because the bishop would gossip about you to his wife, and his wife would tell all the other wives, and soon the whole neighborhood would look at you and know what you did. Julio would edit my journals, ripping out the pages he didn't like.
I decided to try hand feeding a hummingbird. Are you attached to one of the feeders and took it into
When I was diagnosed with anorexia nervosa, I was admitted
so that if a hummingbird would land on the feeder, it would sit on my hand. The trick was to sit still next to the feeder so that the bird assumed you were a funny-looking tree branch. A hummingbird buzzed up to me soon enough. I didn't move. He decided to come up closer, until I felt 8 tiny talons rest on top of my finger. I was holding an entire bird on one finger. If this didn't cement my status as a bird fanatic, I don't know what would. I spent the rest of my summer recreating that moment, chasing the thrill of having a whole bird on my finger.
How did you become attached?
The banana nut crunch cereal flakes had grown soggy, small drops of milk rolling off the spoon like experienced divers. I lifted the spoon to my mouth again, but lowered it before taking a bite. My fingers began shaking, small spasms that sent the soggiest flakes plummeting off the spoon with the rest of the milk. After dropping the spoon back into the full cereal bowl, I put my head in my hands, confused at my inability to eat one of my favorite foods. A moment later, I tried another bite, but when I tried to swallow, my saliva caught in my throat and I coughed instead. I spit the half-chewed cereal into the garbage. I stared at the plop of mush in the can and wondered if I'd suddenly contracted an allergy to milk, or perhaps the cereal expired. My stomach ached from hunger, yet I knew that another bite of cereal would choke me. This pattern of trying to eat but finding myself unable to transformed into a horrible routine, but this bowl of cereal was the first time my body tried to reject food for me. I didn't consider the reality that after only 1 month of systematically turning down foods I had become unable to consume. Back in the kitchen chair, I stared at my mostly full bowl, unsure of what to do. I analyzed my stomach as I watched it curl into the table. Through my shirt, I saw the skin bulging, and I watched it grow, expanding and stretching, while I realized the willpower I lost by even considering eating the cereal. What happened to the power I held when I fasted? Not even 9 in the morning, and I already considered giving that up. My stomach ballooned in front of my eyes. Nobody I met at school remembered my name. I was homesick, and I still hated biology. I lost those battles, but right now it was just me against this bowl of cereal, me against hunger, me against, are you going to eat all that? Me against chubby cheeks. It was me against gluttony, me against succumbing to the natural man. I grabbed the cereal bowl and dumped the contents in their entirety down the drain, running water to wash away the flaky remnants and to overshadow the sounds of my stomach grumbling. I was victorious.
How did you become attached?
Julio told me never to write when I was mad. He was trying to stop me from writing because he knew I would write the truth. If my middle school English teacher hadn't encouraged my stories and called me a writer, I wouldn't have survived it.
How did you become attached?
All through the long dark of winter, it would sometimes blizzard so hard during recess that the teachers would pool every grade at one time into the gym to see if we could kill each other with dodgeballs instead. Once that whole idea was abandoned, they instead kept us in our classrooms where boredom would lead me elsewhere. One elsewhere served as the eastern wall, jutting out as a long bookcase beneath sunlight streaming windows of childhood, where I sat down one day and thumbed through the many books set into its shelf. I pulled one from its place, examined its banana yellow spine and front cover, a murky outer space of purple hues fading into black, a long-nosed salamander man festooned in starlight with his rainbow Star Trek ripping title, The Search for Snout, set above a knobbly pink planet. But what struck me the most were the tiny aliens cavorting upon its globe, characters which set off an engenderment of ideas. During another in-class recess, I wandered up to the chalkboard and drew one such alien of my own, with a long snake-bodied, pterodactyl wings and half-moon curved sharp beak, the Arcad, my first alien creature named and drawn, and the only one to retain all elements from its first design, now lost in the drifting chalk dust of history.
How did you become attached?
Few things were more difficult to photograph well than a hummingbird. They made songbirds look so bulky and clumsy in comparison. Hummingbirds are all about speed, taking between 50 to 200 wing flaps every second. The unique motion of their wings in flight allowed them to hover, fly, straight up and down, and even backwards. Hummingbirds rarely stayed in one place for very long. For every successful shot that I got, I had at least a dozen that were blurry from the movement of the bird. Even the slow-motion video had its wings in a frantic blur. Another challenge for photographing hummingbirds was that hummingbird feathers are iridescent. Unlike many other birds, hummingbirds look completely different when they are in the shadow compared to when they are in direct light. In the shade of a deck, the hummingbird's back would be brown, but when the bird would fly in the sunlight, their back feathers would light up bright green.
How did you become attached? And the hollow needle carves through my earlobe. It removes a piece of skin in order to create the space I need. I fill the hole with metal so my ear can heal around the wound. I look back into that mirror. The girl asks me, "What do you think?" I'm unable to answer her. I stare into my reflection. My eyes sweep from my left ear to my eyes to my other ear. I try to take in the earrings, the small metal balls without diamonds, and my eyes water. And when Jed laughs lightly, saying, "I think he likes them," the girl laughs too. And I smile, nodding because my words cannot express the feelings inside, but I feel like they understand. How did you become attached?
2 steps forward, 2 steps back. Why can you not let go?
Andrew, Adrian, and Sami. Thanks so much for your wonderful attention, and thank you to the students for putting that all together and for the hard work they did this semester. Truly, truly my deep honor to be a part of it all. And now we get to have more wonderful words, more wonderful sharing, because you guys are going to share. Except I don't know who it is because I don't have the clipboard. Do you want to shout out to me, Amber?
Aaron. Aaron Tim.
Aaron Tim and?
Ronald Jensen, Tyler Blackburn, Asher Blakely, and Philip Brown.
So who are the first three? Aaron Tim, Ronald, and?
Tyler.
Tyler. Which Tyler, do you know who you are, Tyler? Tyler knows who he is. All right, so those are our first three open mic people, starting with Aaron. Thanks, Aaron.
Hi. Okay, I think I did this, I don't know, a couple of semesters ago. I read a poem after a class read poems, and I was like, I'm not nearly as good as you guys, but I just want to read with you guys. Okay, that wasn't exactly my plan tonight. I just happened to want to read something. Okay, so there's a 0.002% chance that my mom might see this and be mad, but that's okay. I'm 40 years old. It's all good. Okay. Okay. All right, so here's a poem. Okay. It's called Calls from Home. My roommate gets a call from her mother every evening before dinner. She gets an update on cats and her little brothers. Her mother always asks about her classes. My mother calls at 2 a.m. to tell me she is leaving Las Vegas. Like the Nicolas Cage character, she wants to drink herself to death. She finds the idea romantic. She asks me, oh, sorry. I didn't realize this was such an older version of this poem. Okay, but anyway, I interrupted myself, I'm sorry. Okay. But as I was reading, I'm like, wait, what's going on? Okay, sorry. Oh, you guys, being blind is awesome, especially when you don't use your magnifier to find the right poem. Okay, sorry, moving on. She asks me if I remember the songs for her funeral. I do. When I was 14, my mother would drink after work. As we listened to music, she would tell me what songs I should sing for her when she died. She made me practice Heaven Can Wait and Tequila Sunrise until I got them just right. You are the only one who would do this for me. I tell her I remember, soothe her into hanging up before she starts talking about her father, my father. Creep back to my bed, trying not to wake my roommate, humming Tequila Sunrise.
Forever with you. I'm glad I can be married to you. I'm glad that we could say I do. Happy for all the time we can spend and take fruit to have to end. So I look forward to being with you for eternity. You get sealed and then tell them to me. So always be happy and never be blue. If I can be forever with you. We'll go. Letter to Mom. Mom, I miss you since you've been gone. But the servant with me since you've passed on. I met a woman. Her name's Kelsie. She's loved my life. She would know what I mean. She got married, then we got sealed. Sometimes it's hard to believe it's all real. Look forward to when you can meet my wife and we're all together in the next life.
Hello, my name is Tyler Blackburn. I'm going to be reading a poem called A Tragic Comedy of Nature. Some ask, what is the phenomenon of rain? It is a bombardment of water on bleak dirt. It washes what was once contaminated and continues to cleanse the earth. The filth then foiled frosts into puddles, gathering greatly to devise its return. For a moment, the earth is now stainless because of this great revolt of nature. Though, as complacent time passes, the grime later gains momentum, as the strength of the rain has left. The dirt overtakes the earth until clouds gather enough might to restore order. All of this a keen observer takes in, learning this age-old natural law, almost like a pendulum swinging back and forth between the dominance of these two forces. But what it truly is a war of balance, this of which is mimicked and mocked by man. A keen spectator notices this, floating above and looking down into his history book, and finds it comical, watching the pendulum swing back and forth from good and evil, as people never seem to truly learn. 7 deadly sins, staining man, combated with crimson rain, pushed the pendulum's motion. A war trading lives for oil, only washed away by the obliteration of a nation, once sought to take from. This bestows a jagged pain in his side as chuckles leave the onlooker's lips. Then veiled imperialism by taking over countries for the sake of freeing them, as they say, with puppet leaders, only to be defeated by public outcry. He laughs till he cries. Finally, a nation that harbored and killed Christ, being destroyed after immense moral decay, he cannot laugh anymore, since all his laughter took his breath away. He then closes his book, presses it against his heart, and holds it in his mind, as he steps outside for the pages filling his book to come. Seeing his institutions destroyed, religion poisoned, and freedoms turned to slavery, he roars with an unholy laughter. He is crazy and must be silenced, an elite adds, not being able to get the words out of his mouth fast enough, as a bead of sweat bleeds down his back into the ground, cleansing all the dirt that it touches. Thank you.
Thank you to Aaron, Ron, and Tyler. And then we have Asher, Blakely, Chuck, and Philip, Chuck. But that's all. So what's up with that? Where are the other people? That's like 5. I'm standing here. No one else wants to go? Really? What's your name? Audrey. Hi, Audrey. Okay, Audrey's 3rd. Anyone else? Last Helicon of the semester, last Helicon of 2019.
The decade.
Last opportunity to speak in front of this beautiful community, with this beautiful community on a December evening.
Do it, Brock.
Brock? All right, so the next 3 are Asher, Philip, and Audrey. Then we'll talk about Britt and Brock. So, Asher, you're up.
I'm just kidding, Brock.
So I'm reading something a little different, at least for me anyways, because it's fiction. I got really sick last year, and I ended up inadvertently taking like 4 months off of work, and so I wrote a 25,000 word novella, and this was my favorite scene to write, and I was encouraged to read something by friends, so that's what I'm going to do. I leaned sideways, bumping into Seth. Hey, so how do you feel about roller coasters? Fine. Why? He turned slightly, fixing me with a narrow stare. We should take off early tomorrow and head down to Sandusky, spend the day at Cedar Point. I don't have a car, he says. That's fine, I drove mine down from Cobalt, it'll be fun. I grin at him, tucking my clasped hands under my chin and batting my lashes. Say you'll come, it wouldn't be fun by myself. Oh, I don't know, he waffles. Come on, you want to. I'll pay, it'll be fun. Fine, he says, then smirks at me. I guess if you're footing the bill, I don't have anything to lose. You really don't. We start the day at the power tower because Seth insists on it. I want to try shooting that rush of air as you rapidly climb up and then slowly drop down and see the park spread out before you, rides dotting the landscape like constellations. Not Seth. He's all about the rapid descent, He likes the leisurely trip up, watching Lake Erie appear slowly on the horizon and then dashing to the ground, rip-stop, feeling like your stomach is in your throat the whole way. We argue about it the entire half hour we're stuck waiting at the gate, and ultimately end up doing both because we can't agree. Okay, now the Raptor, I say when we get off the second round of the tower. That's all the way back at the entrance, Seth says with a mock pout, which is why I wanted to go there first. Seth flashes me a grin. You can't argue with tradition. We make our way back across the park slowly. It's actually sort of overcast today, so while there are plenty of people, it isn't really crowded. I'm hoping it doesn't rain later. You should know I've planned this whole day out, I tell him. You did? He stops and tilts his head at me. How? Why? How? The internet. Why? Because that's how you amusement park. You min-max the experience. Hence, I have a game plan. His smile fades a little at the edges. No, he says. No, that isn't how you... He stops and blinks at me. His hands find their way to his hips and his toes tap against the ground. Who broke you? It isn't a min-max, it's an experience. You start on the tower, you see the whole park during the spin, and you pay attention to what calls to you. What ride sparks a fire in your gut and says, we need to do this thing, and then you go and do them. But that'll have you walking back and forth across the park the whole day, I say. Exactly! Seth throws his hands in the air. That's the entire point of amusement parking. I laugh. He glares at me. That isn't what I meant, he says. I grab his hand and start pulling him towards the Raptor. Okay, Mr. Do What Calls to You, what's on your agenda today? Classics, he says. Classics? You know, the carnival rides, maybe the games, the wooden coasters. Blue Streak was on my list too. And we have to ride the train at some point. Because it calls to you, it's a children's ride. No, it's a family ride, and it's tradition.
So I'm going to read 3 poems this evening. This first one is titled, Whatever Broke Open. Whatever broke open the bird, lifeless in the grass, wasn't seeking its song, didn't later recall the soft body and cringe, or dress it with metaphor. Small cathedral in ruins, the ribbed vault collapsed. Whatever broke open wasn't a riddle or omen, wasn't my own heart picked from its branch by an early grief, didn't split like a cut plum, crimson inside, clutching its small stone. Whatever broke wasn't glass, or the ocean tipped forward. Whatever brought the boy months too soon, a baby the size of his father's hand, that summer, wasn't God or a thief. And whatever loss unlocked wasn't supposed to echo into today, strange descant to this other silence. Whatever music has hollowed me is wild and dark and not at all the tune I thought I'd sing on an August afternoon, a birthday I wasn't expecting. This next poem has to do with my name. I was in a class and our prompt, my teacher brought a baby name book. I knew the name of the meaning of my name already, but my name is Philip, and it means lover of horses. So that's the title for this poem. In my how to draw book, circles and arcs became a horse's head, neck, shoulders, or legs, the sketching still visible inside like a penciled X-ray. Those first strokes were then erased, the coat filled in and shaded. Facing pages showed horses in finished scenes, jumping a fence, grazing a field, or hitched to a cart with a driver nearby, signs of what they'd be. I studied the different bodies of each breed, Clydesdale, Quarter Horse, Morgan Horse, Appaloosa, Arabian, learning the lines. I liked Arabians best. Their delicate frames came easily to my thin fingers, my slim wrists. I drew so many, heads bowed, a lock of hair just above the soft, dark eyes, portrait after portrait of myself. And this third poem is a bit of an experiment. It was for a prompt that was about mapping or walking and sort of charting that course. The point is, what I ended up doing was I was thinking about wandering through the library, and this was when I was at Oregon State University, and the college campus library is called the Valley Library. And so what I decided to do was start at the top, choose one book randomly, open to one page randomly. I took a picture of it with my phone, and then I went to the next floor. There were 6 floors. And so then I picked a book randomly, page, the whole thing. And so then each page was my word bank. I could only use words from that page. And I took also a photo of the spine because I wanted to note the number. And it sort of turned into, the poem is called Findings from a Descent. So it was kind of like descending a valley, starting at the top of the library and heading down to the bottom. And what's fascinating to me is, as you know, different floors of the library are like really different subject areas. But choosing the words out like this, I'm sort of surprised at how meaningful and kind of cohesive the end result was. I debated whether or not to read the numbers, and I think I will, because it makes it feel kind of like this travel log. Findings from a Descent, the Valley Library, October 10th, 2017. F868.S5M8. Ridge level, close to the peak, above the rush of human voices. My first view, purple slopes, trees braided with gold like a crown. Withdrawing from the long light, deer are changing to a multitude of stars. JC362.I5. Temporary shelter. Scout for possible conditions. Notice the plentiful generations of life. A writer, attempting to recall his origins, says to himself, "You are a boy growing up." PS3527.A15G5. Narrowed pass. Birdsong echoes over the mountain, a mysterious precaution. Once my father wept, unprecedented for a man of reason and fact. Now, in my wanderings, I see the sacrifice of traveling aloof. GA201.B74. Departure. The cartographer has to reshape his world. Larger rivers, smaller ranges, all by hand. The revision is emptier. More space for less. His best work. TD171.3.C22M666. Deep forests, 20 feet from the bottom, time fragments through a camera, the picture full of detail, but missing hours. I knew the perspective was off. Still, I had expected signs. RC480.5.H347. Grounding. Briefly past the pain. Experience generated many questions, few answers. Hope is a physical activity. I am training my heart to heal. Thank you.
Super classy and have it on my phone. So I have 2 today. The first one is called Flipping Through the Fucking Flashcards. She sits at a desk near mine, somewhat concealed by darkness. The glimmer of sun sometimes catches her eye, but she doesn't seem to notice. She pulls the top card off the deck, reading it closely, flipping it over, and returning it to the bottom of the stack. I've been watching her for a while. I've seen her throw some cards away and place a few new ones into the stack. I hate her, but she loves when I'm angry.
She starts reading only the fronts of the cards, and I feel guilty I ever hated. She only glances at the cards now. The card that reads fuck up, the card that reads selfish, the card that reads you will never find love, the card that reads you can't even keep a fucking therapist. The stack that never ends. Yet each card services at what seems like a rate of 100 a minute, yet she still flips through them, flips through the fucking flashcards. As my anger turns to sobs that I can't control and I blame her. I can't see how I can be happy if she's around, because when she's near, I can't find any silver linings. I can only see the cards, but not even in their entirety, just the feelings being shuffled on repeat. Every day I gamble with her. Will she take control of me today? Will she make me cry until I can't breathe? Will she make my life a living hell? Every day I gamble with anxiety. I have a full house, 21, Yahtzee, but she has the flashcards, the fucking flashcards. And to show you that I'm okay, the next one. This next one is from my practice of yoga. It's called the bottom of the exhale. We did something in yoga today. We inhaled and exhaled evenly. Then we extended the exhale. Then we paused at the base of the exhale. Words cannot describe that pause, the heart beating in the void, the complete lack of creation of carbon dioxide, the complete lack of oxygen. I wanted to swim in that void, to pitch a tent and stare at the stars, to watch my heart beating, to feel Orion and Scorpio. Words cannot describe the bottom of the exhale. If I tried to put it in words, I'd sound crazy, but if you think I'm crazy, that's fine. I don't need you. I have the space at the bottom of the exhale.
You are more than okay, Audrey. All right, so we're going to end the evening with Britt Brock. Really, Brock? Brock is not. Brock just is not on the list. So does anyone else want to be on the list? Yeah, I guess so. Adrian's on the list.
Yeah, you do.
Okay, so we're going to go Britt, Andrew, Adrian. Good?
Okay.
All right, sit.
I got selfish because I haven't been here all semester. I just stopped saying that. So my first poem is a prose poem because I brought it to my nonfiction class, and the feedback I got was, this is really pretty, but what the hell? So I turned it into a poem. It's called Domesticated. Because the flavor of love is eggs, I let the dog lick sinless my plate. Each morning he pads ahead expectantly, watches me slosh out of bed and close the door behind us so my husband can sleep in. I fill the dog bowl before I heat the stove, break a couple eggs, slit each yellow breast with a wooden spatula. He'll gorge and then sit on my toes, eyes trained on each turn of my wrist. How bland it would be, wolfing and shitting the same brown mush twice a day. It's such a bloodless feeding, no sacrifice at all, no shattering on the pan's edge, milky flesh sizzling on low. After lapping my leftovers, the dog yips for water. The salt of it all overwhelms his soft pink palate. If he ever tasted blood, it was in the plasma of hamburger drippings, loveless on the kitchen floor. He never killed anything. In a lifetime, the only bloody egg I've seen I threw away, made my husband start fresh while I left the room. He'll wake after I leave, reheat the coffee, and plop in front of the TV. When we dated, he cooked eggs every day, over easy in bacon grease, the dog's chin matted with gold. And I don't have I'm okay follow-up poems. I just do this thing where I act really cute and get you to like me. But, oh, not that you don't do that. Like, that wasn't, anyway, okay. My last poem is called Three Little Sisters. The three little pigs were daughters whose mother ran out of slop. She gave them each other, crawled into the wolf, and died. So angry. The first pig sister found grass and smoked her ham away.
She married First Chance and let her animal brain cool in the TV's blue glare, all memory of canines and family buzzing to gray. The second pig sister quit food forever, frosted her hungry bones in floral print and fake lashes. She hated her hide and the chops men would gnaw. If she played the farmer's games right, she could suck instead of squeal at night. The third pig sister did everything right. She got perfect grades, a second degree, took all her meds, took her walks outside till she skipped off a cliff in bright sunlight. The note on the counter said she was fine. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Andrew. I got selfish too. It's like, wow, this echo is really cool. It's cool. It's like chilling. Yeah, leave it. I'm feeling good about it. So I'm going to read two poems for you. The first one is called I Like to Sweep. He asked me why. I hate myself. I don't, I say. I don't. But he plucked the question from the warm air ringing with silence. I like to sweep, I tell him. Sweep these things through the cracks of closet doors. I like to hide them there, so that the dismantling work we do in therapy doesn't have to include me. He asked me, do you love yourself? Of course. Of course. Another pluck. Why? And through warm silence, I choke on fragmented utterances of because I do, because I have to, say I do. He knew that glass frames shatter so easily that mere words can break them, and if my glasses tip from the windowsill, I won't bother to puzzle fragments back together. I would have told him I'm broken, and that the shards pierce me daily. He would have already known, but the silence is thick, and warm air holds us in place. Weeping, transcending. And the second one is called 3 a.m. Considerations. His teeth left dents in my wrist. Overexcited, he claimed. But in a dark room, he sleeps. And I'm awake, peering at red canyons collapsed against the white of my skin. I haven't told him I'm leaving. Moving 2,000 miles away. I don't know how to craft the words. My tongue curls after I'm, and leaving fractures into in love with you. I breathe in, he breathes out. His bare chest falling, rising. He doesn't know the way he holds my waist, grips my hair, kisses my neck, is better than brisk wind glazing my cheek, better than rainfall on my fingers, waterfalls cascading from the tips. His teeth left dents, marking my body, and he doesn't know as he sleeps, and I press in the crimson that I hope they scar, much in the same way I do. Thank you.
I like the echo though.
It's for the people who don't.
Okay. that makes more sense. Sorry.
It's okay.
Is it good? I can speak louder.
Okay.
A lot of people tell me I can't, and I can't. But I okay. So as some of you know, I'm Adrian. And as others of you know, because I've told you before, I'm on a quest to make poems out of the weird, very vibrant dreams I have. And this is important because I had this one on Tuesday. So it's called a movie I had seen in dreams before, or at least remember catching the end of one day on AMC or Turner Classic Movies. It has that feel at least. It's an old 60s war or fantasy movie made in Britain, like a mixture of H.R. Pufnstuf on the scale of Lord of the Rings. And the main character is Jimmy from the Pufnstuf movie, who has somehow teamed up with Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I only saw the second half last time, and now I'm seeing the second half again. But suddenly, I'm Jimmy, walking from the war at the end of the movie alone, with visions of old-timey Civil War generals riding horses down a hill, bugles bugling, walking back across dead landscapes, gray and brown. I come to a gigantic green space with few trees laid out like a public park. In the short distance, the ground seems to drop off to blue nothingness. And all through the park, along the hills, stand a myriad of fairy tale creatures. Each of them is rather obviously a person in a suit, and very poorly made, straight out of the 60s, in the style of Sid and Marty Krofft, 1961's Babes in Toyland, the Banana Splits show, A Christmas Parade, or any similar suit-wearing film of holiday or fairy tale world. But there are hundreds of them, the most ever gathered for a production in history, standing in distinct clumps as if representing different fantasy species. Mother Goose characters, Humpty Dumpty and the old gander herself in a bonnet, among all other dead-faced, paint-eyed cloth figures of nursery rhymes next to circus stilt walkers with long red polka dot pants, short green-suited goblins' noses curling like squash, light blue smiling monsters so tall they have to be still props with hidden supports. They stand in long rows along the green hills, nothing but blue sky behind them, as if alighting on the edge of fantasy land until war was over, waiting to return. Thin cone-headed elves, fluffy bright-colored birds, gigantic white rabbits, 11 feet tall in bright pink bow ties, an all-around feeling of Easter beneath a warm blue afternoon sky on green grass. I walk past them all, while none make a sound, and only a bright yet despondent movie ending song plays. And then reach the far edge, find that I'm standing on top of a massive down, with impossibly steep grassy hillside between me and the small town below. Idyllic, colorful houses laid out straight from a 60s British postcard. Steel factories fuming, looking the picture of normal. So I slide down the grass of the hill, and I walk back toward town, even though I know that Grandpa Joe will die in a later scene, and I will have to exist now only in that town, moving forward toward elements of fantasy in that glossy celluloid among the rooftops below the turquoise curvature.
All right, you guys, thank you to Britt, Andrew. Thank you again to Star, Steph, to Kat and Joseph. Thank you to Carly, M, Shaun, Camille, Tyler, Mark, Justyn, Andrea, Britt, Alyssa, Kelsie, Andrew, Adrian, and Sami, who were the featured readers. To Aaron, Ron, Tyler, Asher, Philip, Audrey, Britt, Andrew, and Adrian, who were generous enough to share their work with us tonight. I leave you with the words of Cheryl Strayed, which is at the top of the syllabus that we used for this class. Let yourself be gutted. Let it open you. Start there.
Don't forget to put your chairs.
Oh, put your chairs away.